Nom 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 nom. Hi guys, you're watching Wraptor. Today we are installing this real carbon fibre SVR style spoiler and matching carbon fibre base plate to this rather special F-type. This isn't just any F-type, this is a very limited edition, rather special Lister LFT-666. Lister take the already beast of a Jaguar F-type and enhance it even more. Much like we do at Wraptor, of course, but in their own style. Let's have a look around it, shall we? Got a nice carbon rear diffuser here and a performance exhaust. Got Lister's own badges on the back here. These massive 21-inch wheels with rubber band tyres. There are badges on the side there as well. Nice touch. Doesn't it look nice? A rather special car indeed. On the interior, got a special plaque. Lister on the steering wheel there. And of course, this boasts 666 brake horsepower with their own tuning package. We've got some additional wheel arch spats on the rear here. I like those, nice touch. If it was mine, I'd have them even wider and on the front as well. Roberto, you got some editing with this. I can't even speak today. The spoiler we are installing is actually an active spoiler, so not a static one that stays still. It's actually going to go up and down at a certain speed, and it's designed to work with the pre-existing motor on your F-type for this little flap that it comes with as standard. So to install this kit, what you need is the little flap style active spoiler. So what you should have in the car is a button like this. So basically it's already got a motor and electronics and a button to control that little flap rear spoiler. And if you didn't already know, it does go up and down at a certain speed. So let me turn the ignition on, and then if I press this button, you have to press it once for it to go up, and you have to press and hold it for it to go back down again. And then press and hold to stow it away, and that's the spoiler as standard. So that will go up, I think, around 70 miles an hour and then goes back down again on its own at 50, unless you use the button yourself inside the car, so you've got your own control over it. So we're going to remove that standard little flap now, and we're going to replace it for the carbon base plate, and we're also going to install a mechanism, and then finally the carbon spoiler on top. So we'll have a sort of SVR style real carbon fibre big wing that's got this active motion. So what's in the kit? This is what it consists of. A real carbon fibre big blade rear wing, the real carbon fibre tailgate base plate. We've got these little upright stalks as well, also again real carbon fibre. They slot in here like so. And then we've got our own engineered active brackets. And this linkage here, two of those, left hand and a right hand, that connect to the pre-existing motor, and they give you this kind of movement here to deploy and stow the new carbon fibre rear spoiler. So the first job is to remove this existing tailgate base plate, and to do that I need to raise the spoiler. That's going to give me access to these bolts underneath. I just need to pop off these plastic caps to expose the bolt heads, and then there are some T30 bolts to undo, 4 of them. Next, we're going to need these little grills out the way, which are water drain points, to basically gain access through there later on down this little modification. So I'm just going to pop these out and not lose it, and then pop the outer piece out like that. In case you missed it, here we go again. There's that bit, keep that aside, and then the outer bit should pop through into the tailgate area like that. Next, we need to undo all of these little Torx bolts, or they look like Torx bolts. They're actually a 5-pointed bolt with a little anti-tamper peg inside, so you need a special socket to undo those. I can't remember the proper name for them, I'll have to look it up, but it's got 5 points to it and a little dimple in the middle, and that's what will fit over them. Failing that, you're getting them all out with mole grips and changing them for normal ones, aren't you? So I'd recommend buying the proper socket. You'll only need one to do this job and throw it in your toolbox forever, but if you really don't want to, you can carefully get some mole grips on there, just loosen them off like so, but I wouldn't recommend doing them back up again with mole grips. I'd change the bolts. They're just M6 bolts, perhaps with some nice stainless steel ones, approximately 10 to 20 millimeters long, and that will suffice to rebuild it perfectly fine. Once the bolts are out, this will lift up, but bear in mind it will be quite stuck on with this rubbery gasket, so it will need a gentle lever or a firm tug to pull it upwards. Try not to go flying and scratch your paintwork, please. Once we've done that, we can unplug the motor, unplug these earth points, and then we could unplug or we could unbolt this thing here. This is a aerial to do with the stereo system. And ta-da! There is the old spoiler and old motor mechanism removed. Right, so I've brought the old mechanism over to the workbench, and we're going to remove the old active spoiler brackets and replace them for our new beefier ones, which are a different geometry setup to suit the new SVR style big wing spoiler. So to remove these, we've got these two 10mm nuts here. That's the easy bit. But then the axle, if you like, is kind of crimped onto the motor using these weird crimp things. So we've got a simple way around this. We are just going to cut them off. Right, which side is which? Goes that side is that side. So these bolts are going to be lining up here. And we're going to cut it just that side of this pre-existing crimp. So we're going to be cutting these off where I've put these purple paint marks here and here. Disclaimer: always use suitable personal protective equipment, and only trained, authorized personnel should be responsible for using power tools and things and stuff. Yes. Can't get to that one. Go that way. Oh, yay! Right, now they're cut, we can undo these nuts. 10mm if you don't know what size they are. Last nut here. And then the old active bracket should slide out. So you've got to push these threads out a little bit if it will, wiggle, 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 and then slide it out with a wiggle and a majiggle, known as a wiggle majiggle. And there it is, there's our little sort of puny original bracket. Similar to the other one, they've got a lot of pivot points on them to do that kind of motion. I compare that to our new one. Obviously you can see the geometry is quite different. Keeping all my fixings in one place rather than all over the workshop. If you can't remember where things go, guys, then label stuff up, take photos of it before it comes apart, things like that to help you reassemble it. It's so much easier. Right, now we've got to get our new brackets in. So I'm going to feed it in from this side, slot that axle through this rubber, and it should meet somewhere close to this axle here. So now we need to connect these back up so we can weld them, or I may even put a bit of a tube over that as well, just to close that gap up a bit. That's a little bit bigger than I hoped. I could fill that for a weld, but maybe in hindsight I should have left a little bit more material on that shaft where I cut, just like, I don't know, what's that, 3mm, something like that, just to fill that gap up. And then what we need to do is weld those back together again, because we haven't got the weird crimp things, but a good weld will be absolutely fine. There's not loads of torque and stuff on these, so as long as you've got someone that can weld, you'll be absolutely fine with that. Same with the other side as well, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. Now, if you remember, we uninstalled this in the deployed spoiler position rather than the stowed spoiler position. So this is the important bit. Okay, we need to make sure that our mechanisms here are all the way deployed. Okay, so if I move it, nom 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 nom. Which way do we need to go? Okay. Bear with me. I'm doing this one-handed so I can film for you guys. Right. Okay, so that's all the way deployed, okay? That starts to stow, that's all the way deployed. So the same, you need to make sure this one's all the way deployed, bolt the other one on, make sure that's all the way deployed as well. And then you're welding these in the exact same position. If you get them in slightly different positions, it means the spoiler isn't going to have this nice smooth linear movement. One side is going to go before the other and it kind of shakes around a bit like that. Now, disclaimer, they do twist a little bit anyway, and that's due to the nature of the geometry. Basically, as you can see, they've got so many pivot points in here on both sides, you get a little bit of play in them, and then it needs that so it all moves freely. Okay, so there is a little bit of shake on these spoilers, and that's normal, but I've seen them assembled pretty badly where when they should deploy in this movement and instead they kind of do this which you don't want. So top tip for that, just make sure they're all the way deployed, both sides. If need be, get someone to hold them in that position or some grips to hold them in that position before you weld these together, okay, and then your spoiler will operate as it should. So in this case, I found a couple of, these are M10 nuts that slot lovely over the shaft there, and that's going to give me a nice surface area to weld to. See, it's a larger area than just trying to weld two little shafts together. I'm going to be able to weld all in that groove this side and all in that groove this side as well to give me a nice strong hold, and it's just going to be easier to weld. So that's how I'm going to do this one. Now this is probably the hardest bit, right, especially if you can't weld. Ideally, you know someone that does, that could do this bit for you. If you don't, we've got options. You can send us your existing motor base plate and we will basically put the new brackets on, weld them on for you, send them back. Or we have an exchange unit where you send us your old base plate and we send you one that's already been converted. Or of course we can do the whole job from start to finish for you. So there's loads of options. If you want this spoiler for your car, don't be afraid to get in touch. We'll make it happen. Top tip, when you're welding these things, make sure you attach the earth to the axle. And I'm doing this via a pair of mole grips that I'm using as an intermediate piece. Don't try and earth the body, the base plate itself, because otherwise the electric current will try and travel through the motor and the gearbox and it could damage it. All right, so we just want to focus on the thing we're welding. So we're earthing the axle and we're welding the axle. Does that make sense? Okay, there's it all welded together. So I've used those nuts as an intermediate piece. If I left a little bit of length on those shafts there, I wouldn't have to do that. But I don't mind that anyway, because it's given me a nice large surface area to weld to. Nothing's in the way, that's absolutely fine. And the beauty of it, now I've got a nut to turn it with. So I can actually check that these are both working in synchronization. Looking pretty good. And that's them fully stowed away, which also allows me to get to the rear where I haven't welded yet, and I can weld that if I want, but I wouldn't say it's mandatory because I've got actually quite a decent amount of purchase on the other side. But optional, you can do if you want to. Now, I've welded this using a stainless wire, so it shouldn't really rust. But if you don't do that, what you can do, just to protect this a bit, is give it a little bit of paint, just to protect it from any sort of rust. Now that's done, it's time to bolt it back onto the car. Remembering all your electrical connections that you took off earlier. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to screw this thing on as well. Time to put the screws back in, and in this case I've got myself some nice brand new stainless steel screws, and the size is M6 by 20 millimeters, if you are wondering. So before we go any further, let's just check this works. I'm going to turn the ignition on, cycle the motor, and check it's doing what it should do. Looking pretty good. When it's stowed, both actuator arms are all the way at their stops. I think we're good to carry on. It's time to install the carbon fibre base plate, and I'm going to attach this using these T30 screws that I removed earlier to hold the original little flap spoiler on. So that's going to sit like so. I'm going to try and put some effort in to align it so all the panel gaps are nice. We removed these earlier from the other side, if you remember, these caps. That's now given us access to screw these bolts in and hold the carbon tailgate piece in place. Top tip is get all of the bolts in loosely before tightening any of them fully. Otherwise it'll be a nightmare to try and line them up. So slightly annoyingly on this one, I'm having to file these holes here to elongate them slightly to get the base plate to line up. Haven't had to do this on previous ones, but this is an example of when some kind of finessing and fettling is required to get the desired fit. It will bolt on just like that, but the panel gaps aren't exactly symmetrical, which is how I want them. So that's why I'm spending a bit of extra time now with this filing this aluminium bracket whichever way it needs to go in order for the bolts to go in, hold the base plate securely down, but align it exactly how I want it. Next it's time to install these real carbon fibre, handmade little covers for the active brackets, and they sit in there like that. Now they're designed to just slot in. However, the hole is deliberately slightly too small. So that gives us the ability to carefully file a tiny bit at a time the edge until this slots in where we want it. Now where we want it is important. We need that hole to be in the middle, lined up with the bracket there. We don't want to end up with it like that or like that, okay? We want it there just like so. So I'm going to carefully mask and file this carbon a tiny bit at a time until this slots in nicely. Not too loose, but I don't want to force it in and break anything either. Okay, there's that side carefully filed down, and now this is nice and flush. A nice very small gap all the way around. Here I've deliberately sunk it down a little bit, and we're going to deal with that later. But the important thing is it wants to look nice around here, not gapping, and it wants to be in the middle here, which it very nearly is. A tiny bit of pressure and that's in the middle. We need to do the same with that side, and once we've done that, we're going to get the hot glue gun out to temporarily hold this from the top exactly where we want it. Okay guys, hot glue gun's on. So I've got the glue gun warmed up, and I'm just going to hold this so the carbon fibre cover is central to this active bracket. And I'm going to put a few blobs of hot glue on here just to hold it. Now this is a temporary thing, I want to be able to pick this off shortly, so don't go mad with the hot glue, yeah? Alright. Just hold that until it's completely cooled down. It might be a while.
A few moments later.
So, just so you know, that's what I've done. Blob, blob, blob. And that's holding that in the middle. I'm going to do the same with that side. And then I'm just going to check the active brackets work still without fouling on anything, and that everything's okay in that position before carrying on. Okay, now they're temporarily hot glued where we want them. Let's just check they work still one more time without hitting anything. Here goes. Ignition on. And let's press the button. Nothing's touching, looking good. Stowed again, and we're still in the middle. So now it's time to remove this base plate one last time to basically glue these in permanently. You could leave them slotted in, but I don't like the idea of them moving and potentially rubbing or getting caught, so we're going to make a nice firm hold so these don't move. Right, uninstall the base plate. Okay, here's the base plate. I've got myself a nice trestle. And carefully turn it upside down, not nudging these because there's only a few blobs holding it. And then on the underside, I'm going to fill this area full of hot glue. Black hot glue is my weapon of choice. You could use some other product, you know, like a windscreen seal or a tiger seal or something like that, but I find hot glue is nice, it's fast drying, it's sufficient to hold it, and if you do ever want to get them off in the future, it is possible to just pick it all out to separate it for whatever reason if you want to disassemble it. Right, here goes. Now they're glued on, turn it over, pick these pieces off because we don't need them anymore. It's time to refit it for the last time. Now that's screwed back in, we can refit these pieces here. Okay, so these ones you no longer need. I'm just going to refit these little drains. And they go, so that hole is towards the back of the vehicle, basically. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. We're still in the middle. Yep. And now what we can do is neaten up the edges here. So we could leave them like that, but of course it's like kind of tight here, a little bit of a gap here, nothing too offensive, so they could be left like that. But what I like to do now is put some sealant around the edges here, just to take the edge away and make it look nice and neat and a bit more weather tight as well. To do a nice neat job of the sealant, I've taken my time and used some masking tape to mask all the way around, giving myself a 1 or 2 millimeter area for the sealant to actually stick to. So I'm going to put some sealant in there, smudge it around with my finger, not too much because we're not going to need much in there, and carefully remove the masking tape without letting the sticky sealant covered masking tape touch any of the body. Wish me luck. Here goes. That is how you do a nice neat job of the sealant, and it's just got rid of any gapping. So same on that one, and then we'll be ready to install the big carbon blade. Time to swap the badges over, so I've carefully removed it from the old base plate, made a template before removing it, transferred it to the new tailgate piece. I'm going to put some new double-sided sticky foam on the badges and stick them on there. Time to install the big wing, yay! It's been a bit of work to get to this point. 4 bolts hold that to the brackets. The bolts I'm using are some Allen key bolts, so they've got a 5mm head. That'll allow them to sink into the bracket so you can't see them. The thread is M6 and it's 15mm long. And I've gone for a stainless steel bolt here as well, so it doesn't corrode or what have you. They sink into the bracket so you can't see them. Now, once this is on and nipped up, we're going to stow and deploy the spoiler multiple times, make sure it's all good, it's not contacting anything, and if this, when it's stowed away, if the spoiler actually touches these, because there may be some tolerance issue with how you've mounted the carbon surrounds, what you can do is put a washer between the bracket and the spoiler to space it, if need be. Hopefully I'm not going to need that on this one, Just remember though, if you use a washer as a spacer, you will need a longer bolt to compensate. So if you use a 1.5mm washer, then the original bolt was 15mm, remember. You're going to need a 16.5mm bolt in that case. Hope that makes sense. Hope that helps. And there we are all installed. Let's give it a go. And that's our SVR style real carbon fibre active spoiler for the Jaguar F-Type, installed on this lovely Lister LFT-666. I think the extra carbon, especially on the tailgate base plate, really suits the rest of this car. Hope you've enjoyed the vid. If you want this product, it is on our online shop. I'll leave the link in the description. If you'd like installation or an exchange service, we can also offer that. Thanks for watching. I'm Dud, Wraptor Customs.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
We can piece it together. Some additional wheels. Got some additional wheel arch spats on the reel here. I can speak today. So in this case, I've chosen myself. So before. Try again. So that gives it. Okay, now that's screwed back in. And there we are, all installed. Nope, try again. Installed on this lovely Lister LFT X. No, what's it called? It's an F-Type.